Nedum, we just heard from Kyle Walker there. As a Manchester City fan, can I ask you, are you more worried because it's United, or you're more relaxed because it's United?
To be honest, Manchester Derby is my least favourite game in any season, so I am a little bit uncomfortable. But as Carl was saying at the start of the interview, I think this year feels very different to last. I think last year there was this feeling, especially because City were going for the treble. Well, which team had won a treble before? Well, there's only one in English football history, and that's Manchester United. And in that final, it was the case of if United beat City, not only would they win the FA Cup, but they would take the sort of rights to say, we are the treble team. So the pressure was really on for that game there. And obviously City ended up going on to have that iconic season as such. Whereas this year, you could hear so much noise being said about, well, nobody's ever won 4 in a row, 4 league titles. This is what we really, really want to do. And I think with them achieving that last week, I think you can feel that going into this game now, this is their last game. The pressure, it's not that there's no pressure at all, but it's a different type of pressure because they want to go out there and they want to be able to retain their title. They want to be able to beat the old rival. And I think as Kyle's saying himself, like no matter what City are doing or United are doing, this game will always matter to the fans of both football clubs. And you don't want to be going to a place like Wembley and having to watch the opposition walk up those steps and celebrate, whilst also then making sure that you're on the same trains and in the same cars, driving back up to Manchester. So this one does feel different. I would have rather it wasn't against United, but I think it would be the same for United to say it was rather not against City. I think a derby like this adds that extra bit of something, and it's stress, it's frustration. But unfortunately, one side will be happy when the game's over on Saturday.
What stood out to you from that interview with Kyle Walker, Shaka?
I just feel that this season, but certainly in the context of the FA Cup final, how much less pressure he feels the team are under this time around. Well, last year they were breaking records certainly in terms of winning their first Champions League and all that came along with it, especially given the expectation around City for all these years. Yet this time you get knocked out of the Champions League final and the FA Cup final comes as almost a little bit more of a celebration, and which you understand, which I didn't think of, but as he says it, I'm like, of course it is. You know, you don't want to be going into a Champions League final losing an FA Cup final and the psychology around that. Now this time around, it's just we're the best team in the land. Let's go there and prove it. And this is really the curtain closer. So that for me, just in terms of Manchester City's own mentality, kind of stood out. And then of course, you talk about City, you have to talk about the individuals that they have at their disposal. Yet still, there's this true team ethic about them, a camaraderie that you feel, and kind of while we kind of tongue-in-cheek talk about being on the gram, that's just kind of how it feels like they all relate, and it's refreshing to see.
Okay, all right.
You know who else isn't on the gram, don't you?
Please make that the last time you say the gram, okay? It doesn't suit you, Shaq.
You know me,
I mean,
Ali.
you can't.
I'm a gram guy.
No, but not the gram.
I'm a gram guy, you know.
You lost me at the gram. The gram.
Like Rodri, Ali Moreno is not on the gram either.
No, I am not, and I don't have anything against the gram. But what I would say about the interview, the one thing that really stuck out to me when they asked him about, tell us about Rodri and what he does, the stats. So what stats? What? Because I would think that one of the things that Rodri does so very well is that he impacts the game in so many ways that actually go unnoticed by the stats. That the stats are not nearly as important to a player like Rodri. So I'm not quite sure what stats Kyle Walker is talking about. Maybe it's the followers on Instagram or the gram, as Shaka.
Well, maybe you should DM him on the gram.
You want me to slip into his DM?
Yeah, that's.
Is that a thing? That's a thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Slide.
Oh.
It's more of a slide.
It's a slide.
It's not slipping.
You've got to get the lingo right.
I'm sorry, Kay. This is why I'm not on the gram.
Obviously, Man City have had its fair share of top-tier midfielders. Where does Rodri rank?
Why is Nedum laughing at us? Nedum is laughing at us.
Nedum's a gram guy.
Yeah, that was entertaining. In terms of Rodri, Fernandinho was a god to the City fans. He really was. And Rodri being the understudy, a lot of people weren't prepared to see Fernandinho leave. But then as time's passed, you start to see that Rodri is like, you could argue, the most important player for City, as crazy as that may sound. And I think when Kyle's talking about stats, I think he's probably didn't get the right one across, because the one that is to be remembered is the fact that he went a whole calendar year without losing a game of football. I think that is probably the best singular stat that you can give to describe how important or how good somebody is. Like, you can't say the same about the rest of the team. Obviously, they don't lose a ton of games. But imagine that, like, for the guys who've played here, imagine not feeling that feeling when you walk off a field of disappointment for a whole year. Obviously, he's disappointed with the draw, but not with a loss. A year, it seems ridiculous. But he's a god to the City fans. They absolutely adore him. There was a lot of frustration in England when he wasn't nominated for Premier League Player of the Season. Other players were. And you can make a great case for him, because even if you don't, say, want to include the unbeaten record stats, what you could include for someone that's technically like a number 6 is 8 goals and 9 assists. You could really bring that into it and say, I think that's his most productive season he's had for City so far. So he's amazing. He's one of my favourite players, and I think the growth that he's had year in, year out for Man City, I think it says a lot, because, as I say, Fernandinho was a god to the City fans, and they do still appreciate him. But whenever they want to talk about someone good in the City side, they always end up coming back to naming Rodri.